third day and our second full day of sessions. At this time, I do want to invite anyone sitting toward the back of the room to come in just a little closer and to fill in some of the seats that we have here at the front. So many great things are happening at the front of the room. Trust me, you want to make sure that you're experiencing that. Somebody already has their full next 5 years planned out because of conversations they've been having at the front of the room. So please, come on in, come to the front of the room. Everything you are looking for in terms of your business needs can be found here. How are you all feeling this morning? Awesome. I love that. I am feeling awesome as well. It has been such a dynamic past 48 hours. Some of the favorite things I heard yesterday was investors telling a company, we're in, and another investor telling another company, sign us up. And I just love the sound of that, to see so many people in private meetings and organizing things for their businesses truly is the point of this conference. And so we're excited that all of that is happening and so much more. I also loved our keynote speaker yesterday telling us to fall in love with the problem, not the product, but the problem and the ability to solve it. So it has been a great first 36 hours or so. We're looking forward to another great day today. And we're going to get started with a very important conversation. We are having a ministerial roundtable. We've gathered some of the most brilliant minds in politics from around the region to have a very important conversation around this idea of the trade investment nexus towards creating a bold new Caribbean. And that's a heavy theme, but I'm sure that those persons who've been selected to speak on it will help us to dissect that. And for that conversation, we could only have one person. The man, the myth, the legend, the birthday boy. He is the one who has had some phenomenal experience here in the region doing social and economic policy, but also across the wider Commonwealth. And we're so grateful for his vision that has brought us here today. Please give a round of applause and help me to welcome Deodat Maharaj, Executive Director of the Caribbean Export Development Agency, as he leads this panel. And you can keep the applause coming. We didn't sing him happy birthday in the room, so we'll do some applause for him until he gets here. Thank you, Deodat.
Hi, good morning, everyone. Are you all hearing me? It's my great pleasure to welcome on stage the Honorable Chester Cooper from the Bahamas, Deputy Prime Minister. Please give the Deputy Prime Minister a warm round of applause. I would like to welcome the Honorable Minister Onij Waldron as well. Honorable Minister from Guyana, warm welcome. And I would like to warmly welcome as well the Honorable Minister of Planning, Development and Economy from the Dominican Republic, the Honorable Pavel Ernesto Issa. And Ernesto is after that legend, Che Guevara, the Honorable Minister tells me. Warm welcome. Please have a seat. So the reason we wanted to have this ministerial panel, and we are really delighted that we have this powerful panel of ministers, Deputy Prime Minister Chester Cooper, Minister Onij Waldron, and Minister Easter from the Dominican Republic, because these countries are all going through some interesting times. We heard from the Honorable Deputy Prime Minister Chester Cooper yesterday, Minister, when you made the comment, in the last 2 years, the Bahamas would have generated $8 billion United States dollars in foreign direct investment. And this is at a time of challenge, a time of COVID coming out of the pandemic. I mean, obviously, there are lessons for all of us. How did you all do this in the Bahamas?
Well, we're blessed, first of all.
It's better in the Bahamas?
Absolutely. Let me firstly welcome again everyone to the Bahamas. And I hope this conference is going extremely well for you and you're finding a little time to put your foot in the water. I think, our international reputation of tourism, financial services, our God-given gift of location close to the USA has all been very helpful, along with a growing economy, a stable political environment, great international framework reputation has been really helpful. But there has to be a policy imperative up front. And when my government came to office, the Prime Minister of the Bahamas declared that the Bahamas is open for business. And that simple declaration was an invitation to the world really to participate in a very open economy, a welcoming environment where we have a framework that generally makes it easy to do business. So I think the declaration, number one, and the facilitation to make it easier to get it done has also been key.
Okay, thank you so much. You know, I wanted to hear from you, Minister Waldron. There's a big buzz about Guyana, and there's a buzz because of oil. Last year, Guyana had the fastest growth rate on the planet, a growth rate of 54%. And this year, Guyana is poised to eclipse that rate. But I was with His Excellency President Ali in Dubai for a week for a forum on investment that we had there. And at every opportunity, President Ali is saying that his government is focused on other sectors. So what is the vision of the government of Guyana in terms of course, consolidating the oil sector, but diversifying from day one? Can you tell us a bit about those sectors and that vision?
Thank you, Deodad. First of all, morning everyone, and I would like to thank the government of Bahamas and the Bahamian people for your warm hospitality. It has really been a pleasure being here. In terms of, it has been, you are right, from day one, our government, when we got into government in 2020, declared that we will not fall prey to the Dutch disease, where we fully reliant on the oil for, and that has its so many perils. And so we decided that we will use the oil resources to support and diversify our economy. So each sector that we identify, including the ones that you have here as your focus here in this conference, agriculture, ICT, to make sure that those sectors, that the oil resources are put into making sure those sectors are strong and robust. And we are already seeing the results. While we have seen the double digits and the 53% growth, the non-oil economy has also been growing and booming in Guyana. We have seen almost 13% growth in our non-oil economy in the extractive sectors, forestry, in infrastructure. We have seen a 62% growth. We are in the mining and development in ICT. So we are, and agriculture, major push. You know, Guyana, that has been a traditional sector in Guyana, and we are seeing the investment bearing fruit as well in the non-oil economy. I can go on and on, but we are indeed seeing those seeing results and tangible results of growth in our non-oil economy. And the IMF recently issued a staff report. We praised Guyana's approach to development of the economy that called for it, the economy, which is the vision of it not being reliant on oil alone. And that that approach has caused Guyana to be lauded as a model for development at this stage.
And the Dominican Republic, we are so delighted that as part of our CARIFORUM arrangement, Minister Issa is here with us. And the Dominican Republic has done very well on FDI as well, like the Bahamas. Is there a secret, Minister Issa, or is it just hard work, or is it good luck? What is it? And what lessons can we learn from the Dominican Republic?
I would say that the key is confidence.
Yeah.
I think that there is a lot of confidence, not only from national investors, but also from international investors. We are well on our way to get to an equivalent of 4%, or more than 4% of GDP in foreign direct investment in 2023. Last year, we hit that mark. This year, we're going to hit $4.5 billion around $4.5 billion in foreign direct investment. And also, it's about diversification. The Dominican economy, even though its most well-known sector is tourism, and also export processing zones. It's actually a very diversified economy with a strong domestic industrial sector, with a strong service sector, telecommunications, banking, agriculture. Modern agriculture is taking place in the Dominican Republic. Together with more traditional agriculture, we have a lot of challenges there to move agriculture from traditional to more modern. But foreign direct investment is moving towards all those sectors, not only a single sector. Now, tourism certainly is very much it's remarkable. It's recovered. The Dominican Republic was the economy that recovered the fastest in the world in terms of its tourism, and it has been acknowledged by the World Tourism Organization. And it was because of the vaccination strategy that reduced significantly the spread of the disease, on the one hand, COVID-19, and also the mortality rate was quite low. And we also ensure visitors arriving in the Dominican Republic for COVID-19 related health problems. So that helps to recover significantly FDI, investment in tourism, but also in many other sectors. And the economy overall recovered quite fast. But I think it's the sort of the pro-business approach of the government that has provided a confidence in the country. Pro-business doesn't mean pro-rich. Means pro-employment. Small and large businesses feel confident that the government is supporting them and employment.
Thank you so much, Minister Issa. Participants, we want to have a bit of a dialogue, so I'm going to return to the Honorable Chester Cooper with one more question, and we'll open the floor for some short questions, maybe 2 questions, and we'll get a response from the Honorable Ministers. Honorable Deputy Prime Minister, I listened with great interest when you spoke yesterday. And I don't think that we could realize this vision of a bold new Caribbean if we don't address the issue of transportation and logistics. And you said we need to get everybody in the same room to deal with the issue. How, to your mind, and as a business person as well, I mean, what are some concrete steps you would propose to deal and address this transportation challenge that we have in the Caribbean, so Minister Waldron doesn't have to go to Miami to come to the Bahamas, and you don't have to go to Miami to go to Guyana, for example?
I recall flying from, I think it was Trinidad, on Caribbean Airlines, and going to Miami, and then back to Nassau. I recall looking out at the window, flying over the Bahamas and marveling what a beautiful country it was. But it was a little paradoxical that I was passing home and then coming back. I said yesterday that we need to get the commercial players in the room. We need Bahamas Air, Cayman Airways, Caribbean Airlines, Inter-Caribbean, and others talking the same language together. Unless this happens with support of the multilaterals and or some private equity support, we're going to continue to talk about this problem for decades. CARICOM, the CTO, and others like the CIF has been lamenting this issue for a long time. So I know that Bahamas Air, where I have responsibility, is already talking with at least one of these airlines referenced. We're going to build interline and code share. That's step 1. And really, there needs to be an investment in all of these airlines. The question always comes, who is going to pay? The government of the Bahamas, and this is public knowledge, so I will tell you again, is subsidizing Bahamas Air to the tune of $20 million a year. Now, we look at this as an investment in Bahamas Air. We look at the economic benefit that comes from this investment because we are a largely tourism-driven industry. We have 16 major destinations around the Bahamas, and that connectivity is absolutely key, not just for tourism, but our very way of life. So when we talk about this investment, we don't look at it as a loss to the government. We look at it as economic benefit, but at the same time, somebody has got to pay. And therefore, it cannot be a political solution. It cannot be a hand-holding, one love, kumbaya kind of conversation. It has to be commercially viable. And once that is done, once we have the business model, I believe we will begin to solve this problem. It goes beyond air connectivity, however. There has to be appropriate shipping as well if we are going to begin viable trade of goods through the Caribbean region.
I like that, Deputy Prime Minister. I like Kumbaya, but we have to be commercially viable as well. So we open up the floor for perhaps 2 questions or comments. I mean, we have a high-powered panel. Do we have a comment, a question? I see Dr. Leroy Almendarez is moving his hands from Belize. Yeah.
Good morning, good morning. Good morning, Deodat. Good morning, ministers. It's a real pleasure to be here. It's my first time in the Bahamas. Now, it's more of a comment and then a question. If I take the, when you look at growth, as you mentioned, Minister from Guyana, you said, I think you mentioned 54% growth. And in terms of growth economics, that's more of an outlier because in some cases you have countries that have negative growth. In terms of the minister from Dominican Republic, I know you mentioned 4.5 billion, and that's foreign direct investment is a very big thing for us. And Deputy Prime Minister, you said open for business. That's also our slogan that we're using, and then we migrated it to endless opportunities. Now for me, in Belize, in terms of the strategy we're utilizing, we're also looking at MSMEs as a denomination for growth. And so the question that I would want to ask to all 3, in terms of resources, Minister from Guyana, there are so many, with increased resources, in terms of diversification within the MSME ecosystem. So that's my question that I'd like to ask to all 3, the level of diversification, the level of growth. And in terms of foreign direct investment, what kind of economic incentives? We use fiscal incentives to stimulate foreign direct investment because it's very competitive. So that would be my question. In terms of the approach through the MSME ecosystem and the kind of economic incentives that you offer in terms of attracting greater foreign direct investment.
Thank you, sir. Do we have another question or comment? Perhaps Minister Waldron, we start with you.
One comment, question. Good day, my name is Constantine. I am the CEO of Proserpina Agriculture Technology in the Bahamas. And first, I'd like to say to the Minister from Dominican Republic, I received some training in Boca and from AICA there with relations from the Bahamas Ministry of Agriculture and your country. Excellent training. That has led me to inspiration of my company. Speaking from the food aspect, as an agricultural entrepreneur, speaking from youth, I study at the University of West Indies, so a lot of persons within my community are agricultural entrepreneurs throughout the Caribbean. A major issue that we're having, starting for our company with equipment, we're looking towards overseas for input. But in our discussions as agriculture entrepreneurs, a lot of materials I can get within the Caribbean itself. However, logistically, it's actually cheaper to go overseas to get our raw materials and equipment than to actually get equipment from each other. So what I'm really asking is there a way for us to have realistic conversations, not only just with trade agreements, but how logistically, instead of me as a Bahamian, as a Caribbean member, country being a CARICOM, getting raw materials from overseas, I would prefer supporting Jamaica, Dominican Republic, or these countries for getting raw materials for agricultural production because we are in a similar eco-climate and it makes not only logistic sense, but climate change sense as well. So,
Thank you so much for your question. I think we have one more question.
Good morning. My name is Frank McGrath. I'm an investment banker from New York. Mr. Deputy Prime Minister Cooper, you were talking about the Air Bahamas and so forth. We did a project a few years ago with Air Panama to source investors. I am curious, is there an inventory or a list or feasibility, I don't know what you would call it, of the routes you're looking to establish, the frequency, which airports, and so forth, the type of equipment? I mean, I'm sort of asking this in the spirit of like less talk, more business. And how would I source that information?
Thank you so very much for your question. Yeah. Okay, we have one more question. This will be the last question. I want it to be interactive, so we need to give our honorable ministers the opportunity to respond as well. Go for it.
Definitely, so I'll keep it short. My name is Ivy Cooperberg from the World Bank. I cover Haiti, the Bahamas, as well as creative industries in the Caribbean. My question is on the creative economy. We often hear at our annual meetings that Caribbean governments are interested particularly around the youth bulge, how they can engage their youth in particular in the creative economy. And so I would be very interested to hear from all the ministers the way that they view the creative economy and what role it plays in terms of cross-border interactions and creation of employment and opportunities, particularly for youth. Thank you.
Start with you, Minister Issa, to respond, I think, the question on MSMEs, and we speak about FDI, big business. What about the MSME sector accounting for 70% of businesses?
Yeah, first, I think that I should have completed my previous answer, saying that the Dominican Republic offers several things that explain why foreign direct investment have been growing at the pace it has been doing. First, political stability. We have several decades of political stability and peaceful change in power and thriving democracy. That's the first thing. Second thing, macroeconomic stability and strong commitment of the government for that stability. Stability in growth, 5% a year over the last 4 or 5 decades, and controlled inflation. Actually, in the case of COVID-19, that made increased prices all over the world and pushed inflation up. In the Dominican Republic, we are already in line with our targets. Our inflation rate is around 4% a year, plus and minus one. So you have a growing market, you have political stability, stability of the rules, and macroeconomic stability in terms of prices. Now, we have two regimes that you have to understand them separately. When the free zones regime, which is completely free of taxes, and the national regime, which is a normal regime, but with tax reimbursement when you invest and export for exports. And you also have a special regime for tourism with special tax breaks, in particular for investments. And in terms of SMEs, I would say that the government, it's coming from years ago, but under this government, it has has broken records. The most important support has been credit. The credit program for SMEs is of a large scale. So at the very low rates, market rate, but low rates, and availability of credit, which is the most important constraint that small SMEs has to access credit.
Minister Waldron.
Thank you. To answer the question of the MSMEs, in Guyana, we recognize indeed that the small business, especially as our economy is now growing, that it's so easy for the small businesses to be crowded out by the large conglomerates. And what we have, so we have the Small Business Act. There's been several initiatives. One of the Small Business Act, which we set aside, there's a legal infrastructure set aside for preferential treatment of small businesses. And coming out of that, we have a 20% set off for all government procurement that accounts for billions of dollars, but 20% of that is legally 20% of small businesses have to be entitled to government procurement. And so every ministry that is setting out procurement, there's a set off that small businesses have to be included in that. We also have there is an amount for small contracts, small businesses with the bond requirement is being removed for those small businesses. We have several tax incentives as well for the priority sectors in agriculture, mining, where tax incentives are given taxes are removed. There is VAT removed from machinery, and this is all with a view to aiding the small businesses to compete as well. We have, in terms of the question with the youth, this also ties into it. There have been several initiatives by government to get youth involved, and so with a view of the agricultural priority that we have company formed by young graduates of our agricultural school to get engaged in farming of the high-value crops of broccoli and cauliflower. All of those that company was formed by the initiative of the government to get young people involved in that project. And so in terms of the creative industry, we have a multi-million-dollar grant set aside for through the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sport for young creatives in fashion, music, and the arts. They're given several grants throughout the year, and for them to be able to explore their their art or craft or whatever it is, whether it's music, whether it's fashion, even in terms of the makeup and several other kinds of outlets that these young people have as well. We have in ICT, there is the girls and young people in ICT. We have the robotics team that it has been directly supported by government as well, and those young people are doing well. So through the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sport, we have particular initiatives to be and resources directed towards the young people growing and getting involved in business and creative.
Excuse me, the Dominican Republic has also a special regime for SMEs for public procurement by law, and it's regulated, and the share of purchases benefiting small and medium and micro, small and medium enterprises is increasing significantly because of that specific policies.
Yeah, one final point with the oil and gas, which is the final thing, we have a local content policy, which is that there is several sectors, areas, 40 or so, that businesses from Guyana, from local businesses have to, that the contractors, the oil and gas contractors have to use our local businesses in these in these sectors. This includes catering and transportation, rentals, and this provides an opportunity for our young and coming businesses in Guyana to get the opportunities in oil and gas as well.
Thank you so much, Honorable Minister Waldron. Before we hear from the Deputy Prime Minister, just to alert you, we're going to take 2 or 3 questions again from the floor. We have like 18 to 20 minutes remaining. I intend to finish on time as well. So just to alert you guys that we are happy to take questions. Honorable Deputy Prime Minister.
Thank you. I think the question directed to me related to air connectivity and routes. Let me just say that I believe that we all in the Caribbean are in the tourism business, and I think this has to be the driver on a commercial basis to force the connectivity between the islands. We've been talking a lot about multi-destination travel. The Bahamas has direct service from more than 25 cities in USA and Canada. We have 10 flights a week from the UK on British Airways and Virgin. I foresee the Bahamas as a hub to facilitate onward travel to some of the major destinations in the Caribbean region. And then there are opportunities over and beyond the big consolidated airline that I talked about earlier. There's opportunity for small commuter airlines. Maybe there's a direct service going to a hub in the Southern Caribbean, and there are commuter airlines taking traffic outward to the smaller territories, for example. But Bahamas is well positioned because of its direct airlift already. We have 8 million tourists coming to the Bahamas. We have pre-clearance. We have international TSA pre-check. The infrastructure is in place, and therefore we just now need to work on the business plan to get the traffic that we are seeing onward to the Caribbean. There has to be also a commercial effort on shipping, and we have great transshipment out of Grand Bahama, for example, where there's significant opportunity for logistics, transshipment, deep water harbor, etc. We're working on direct flights from the Middle East, Qatar Airways, Emirates also looking at travel to the Bahamas. So what I'm suggesting is we don't need to recreate the wheel. We have to work with what we now have and really plug into it to cause there to be more feasibility for onward travel for multi-destination tourism, or to go to Guyana for oil and gas business or agribusiness somewhere else in the Caribbean. I think once we set the framework, the network, and the routes up, I think, you know, we begin to build it as a hub, and the rest will be history. There's a lot of question about the youth and participation. We're actively involved with facilitating programs, the downtown development program, revitalization that we're working on. We are inviting young people to participate from the cultural community. And I think creating the opportunity helps them really to drive and grow their business, in addition to the $50 million that we have allocated for small business investments. Finally, I would say in relation to incentives, that's been a previous question. We can find all of the details of all of the incentive packages offered in the Bahamas on the website of Bahamas Investment Authority. And I think there you will have a bullet point explanation of all that's available to attract investments to the Bahamas.
Minister, we open up the floor for 2 or 3 questions, if there are any. Please.
I wanted to ask a question about agriculture, because I think food security, climate smart agriculture is really critical to the growth of the region. We all import huge volumes of food. Sorry, I should have said I'm Diane Edwards from Mona School of Business Consulting. I think that agriculture is one of the critical areas, and we find that the financial institutions are very hesitant to invest in agriculture and to modernize our agriculture, because we're really talking about climate smart, high-tech agriculture now. And what I'd like to know from the honorable ministers is what you are each doing in your countries to promote the development of high-tech agriculture as a solution not only to the import of food, but also to building exports. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Diane. Do we have another question or comment? Going once? See, ministers, you all offered very cogent and compelling perspectives with full and absolute clarity. But we have another question or comment.
A pleasant good morning to the chairperson, to the honorable ministers, as well as to all the members in this forum. Now, my question is being addressed directly to the Honorable Chester Cooper, Deputy Prime Minister. First of all, let me commend you and the strength of your economy as well as your currency. What you are doing right now is a lesson that we can take a page out of your book. But first, we must understand your book before we can take such a page. Understanding that the Bahamian dollar, which came about in 1966, it is so strong that it is pegged 1-to-1 or on par with the US dollar. I would like for the Bahamian government to work with the rest of the Caribbean region for us to strengthen our currency and our economy so that we can mimic our brother. I call you our brother because you are taking the lead. You are among the US currency, you're among the pound, you're among the sterling, you're among the Swiss currency. When you look at the strongest currencies internationally, The Bahamian dollar is flying high.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much.
I think there was an earlier question on agribusiness, and I know my colleague from Guyana would be much more well-versed in building a robust agricultural industry than we are. But let me just tell you that the Ministry of Agriculture is working feverishly to meet the Caribbean agreed imperative of reducing food imports 25% by the year 2025. And they're doing it through the use of technology. We've recently signed an MOU with a company in Canada for the production of containerized farming equipment for the Bahamas that we will deploy across the islands where we can have more predictability, if you will, in the farming outputs, as well as we have recently funded the Bahamas Development Bank to the tune of $30 million for the development of agribusiness and linkages to tourism. So we recognize the need for food security, notwithstanding our robust tourism industry. And may I pivot to the question on currency? I think the strength of the currency is driven by our ability and our success in earning US dollars over the past decades, driven mainly by tourism. We have kept our tourism industry robust and strong. This year, we have forecasted that we will attract 8 million visitors. We continue to work on our product. We continue to work to increase tourism spending. And so long as we are earning U.S. currency, we're able to support the strength of our dollar, which is pegged to the U.S. dollar. I'd be happy to engage in a more technical answer on this subject. But I believe that's the simplified version. I believe the foundation of the strength and the growth of the economy cause us to be able to substantiate and justify the peg and to keep that peg in place. Of course, it has served us well. It makes it easy to do business in the Bahamas. We have no foreign exchange limitations even for repatriations, even though we have exchange controls. So I believe it's a system that serves us well, and the strength and the growth of our economy by continuing to attract foreign direct investments and to continue to grow some other sectors like renewable energy and agribusiness and the industrial sector, where we've attracted $1 billion of new foreign direct investments in Grand Bahama over the last 2 years, are things that we must continue to do to keep the foundation and the fundamentals of the economy strong. I think that's where it starts.
Thank you so much, Deputy Prime Minister. And Minister Waldron, I like the question Diane asked as well, because we are talking about transformation of the region and building a vision for a bold new Caribbean. And there are some priority sectors. The Honorable Deputy Prime Minister spoke about transport and logistics. And Guyana in the CARICOM Caribbean leads on agriculture. So please, we'll be delighted and we look forward to your response.
Yes, thank you very much. We have launched recently our Low Carbon Development Strategy 2030, and in it is the particular emphasis to target the high-value products. And there's several measures in that strategy to promote climate-smart practices in agriculture. So I made mention earlier of our program. This is an initiative called the Agriculture and Innovation Entrepreneurship Program, where we've brought in young people from the Ministry of Agriculture, and out of that they're being incentivized by government to come up with climate-smart practices in agriculture. We had, out of this program, we've launched 300 shade houses, which helps with the promotion of high-value crops, production of high-value crops, and also to increase the yield. We have several photovoltaic measures as well, which also with a view to using less water, less soil, but increasing the yield of production. And these programs are seen increasing more and more successes. According to the by 2020, 2025, we ought to be able to meet at the stage where the yield is enough where we're able to export. Right now, we are able to be self-sufficient in corn and soya. Now, corn and soya is particularly important for the region because it aids the poultry industry, and so far we've had to be importing that. So for the region to be self-sufficient in corn and soya is a significant importance. So we started this pilot project and we are seeing by 2025 we will be self-sufficient, and thereafter we'll be able to export to the rest of the region. We've had also several strategies for the water conservation, for erosion, and I mentioned the photovoltaic, the more organic use of organic material as opposed to chemicals for fertilizers, and we've had implemented several crop rotation and diversification in our large-scale farming as well. In the fisheries, as Guyana is also very prolific in terms of our fisheries, we implemented ponds and different processes to increase our yield of fish and to be able, this is ultimately with a view for Guyana and the region, because we can't do this, we're not developing this outside of the region. Our goal and our vision is that that region becomes self-sufficient and that we are able to reduce our food import bill by 25% by 2025. And so all of these initiatives is with a view to the region as a whole, the Caribbean region as a whole, becoming self-sufficient. And so there are many other initiatives. There is the Go Invest CEO is here, and we'll be making our country pitch, and so we'll be able to outline other kinds of initiatives that the government is doing in agriculture specifically. But definitely we are seeing already more opportunities. We've even been discussing with Brazil, northern Brazil, with growing wheat as well. And there's different, particular strain of wheat that can be grown in our climate as well. The rice, we have changed the species of rice that we are using to the more high nutrient, healthier rice. So even changing our diet so that we're healthier, and those kinds of produce that we traditionally grew, to be able to tweak them in terms of the technology that it's get higher yield as well as it is healthier for the body.
Mr. Waldron. Minister Issa, perhaps you'd want to comment on the questions, but we also spoke about transport and logistics. Remember, we want to build a bold new Caribbean. We heard about agriculture. So in addition to any comments you may wish to offer on the questions, perhaps you can share with us, what is the Dominican Republic doing with respect to a green economy transition, and any incentives offered in that particular area?
Well, the renewable sources of energy are growing in the Dominican Republic quite fastly. We are near to achieve 25% of total energy production from renewable sources, both hydro, which is the base, but also mostly from solar energy. It's increasing fastly. Certainly we have a technological constraint, a technological challenge in how to store energy from renewable sources. But the pace that we are very, very happy and enthusiastic about the pace in which solar energy and wind-powered energy, it's taking in the country. We are actually proud of that. So, the government provides, there is a law that provides a number of incentives to invest in renewable energy, not only in terms of energy production, but also in terms of energy consumption. Even there are incentives for households to use renewable sources, and there are other incentives. In terms of agriculture, the Dominican Republic is quite self-sufficient in a number of food products. Certainly there is a dependence of imported food on a certain number of critical items. Nonetheless, technification of agriculture in order to increase yield is of utmost importance for the country, first. And second, to adopt more sustainable production techniques in order to reduce the use of chemicals in agriculture and the reduction of use of water, which is the hydric stress is growing in the country, and that's a major challenge that we have. That's why there are strong programs in order to change the technological upscale in agriculture, in particular in rice, for both reducing the use of agrochemicals and reduce the water dependence, in particular of rice. We still use this old technique of flooding the fields, and there is a lot of waste of water there. And in a country where we have a lot of water stress, 60% of total water that we produce are used in agriculture, and out of that, 60% is used in rice, and most of it is just lost because of the inefficiency of irrigation methods. So transformation of irrigation technique is of the utmost importance for modernization of agriculture. But we have to consider very seriously that food security and food resilience in the region, we have to look at the regional level and not only at the national level. It's going to be very difficult for many countries in the region to reduce dependency of imports of foods significantly. But if we work together as a region, we can complement each other. This is why the Dominican government signed an agreement with the government of Guyana in order to explore ways to cooperate and build regional food chains of production to support food security and reduce the vulnerability of our economy to food shocks, external food shocks.
So we are talking about building a whole new Caribbean. We've touched on transport and logistics. We've spoken about agriculture, green economy, transition. But innovation and digitalization and technology is so critical to level the playing field and allow our firms and institutions to compete globally. Honorable Deputy Prime Minister, you were telling me, hopefully I wasn't dreaming, about how you're using artificial intelligence in your tourism sector and perhaps other areas of government. Can you share with us about this? After we all saw this riveting presentation on artificial intelligence earlier during the conference. Perhaps you can share some thoughts with us.
Let me approach it from two directions. Firstly, we are building capacity. We have an initiative called Innovate 242, where we are partnering with tech hubs around the world. We have tech hubs relationships already with Canada, USA, Saudi Arabia, and we're working on one or two more. That's going to help us to build capacity in every sector across the economy of the Bahamas. Next, I would say in relation to tourism, we've been actively using AI and deep learning techniques to really understand our clients better, understanding the trends in the market, who's talking about the Bahamas, what they're saying about the Bahamas, helping us to target specific audiences, improving our return on investment for marketing, advertising, etc. We have a target market, for example, for families earning more than $100,000 a year. We are able to identify and reach them scientifically, and this is reaping significant dividends. We're 60% ahead of last year in terms of our arrivals, and we're going to be 25-30% ahead of 2019, which was a record-setting year in tourism. Now, let me correct that this isn't all as a result of AI, but I do think that our work that we're doing now is going to help us to shape our approaches in the future to sustain a decent level of growth in this business.
Using technology and deep to drive decision making, to create jobs and employment. I like that. Minister Issa, we have 4 minutes again. So you have your 45-second pitch. I mean, any final thoughts, comments?
Yes, I would like to add about the SMEs question. One of the main objectives of the Dominican government is to diversify tourism. Diversify tourism in geographical terms, and also moving beyond the all-inclusive mode of production. And that means developing new poles in the country, in the south, in the north, and in the east. There are 3 very important projects that are changing the profile, the geographical profile of tourism in the country, and moving away, complementing the all-inclusive tourist model, means to strengthen the capacities of SMEs to provide for tourism, which is one of the things that lack at the beginning. That why did we adopt the all-inclusive model? Because there were no national and SMEs able to provide for tourism. So, but now we have learned, and we know now that we need to strengthen the capacity of small businesses to provide food, to provide entertainment, and many other things that are crucial for tourism. So this is why the government its objective is to support the capacities of small and medium enterprises in Miches, in Pedernales, and in Puerto Plata, which are the new 3 poles of the tourist development, so that the development of tourism creates spillover effects over the territory where the tourist spots are located, and for benefiting communities.
Thank you so much, Minister Issa. Minister Walron, final comments?
Yes, thank you. To speak to the ICT focus, which is particularly important for any country in this this century, to be cutting edge, to make your economy globally competitive. We need a robust ICT, and Guyana's focus has also been to train and develop capacity in this area, to make sure our government services, direct investment is going in to make sure our government services are available digitally, to create connectivity, ICT hubs. We have a vast country, and to be able to bring that connectivity, so investment in fiber optic cables. We've also liberalized the telecommunications sectors to bring investment in this sector to we have removed the monopoly since we came into government in 2020, and so this invites investors in this area as well. So those are the initiatives among others, but training is indeed one of them. Our vision is to have Guyana be an ICT powerhouse, to use it for not only telecommunications, but to use it for delivery of health services, delivery of education, to be on the cutting edge in that regard. So that investment is going on several incentives. The legislative framework is currently being put in place. We've had several bills passed in Parliament to legalize electronic transactions and digital payments, and we're seeing more and more the interest in Guyana in that regard.
Thank you so much, Minister. Honorable Deputy Prime Minister, the final word is yours before I close.
Thank you. Earlier I spoke a lot about using what we have to advance to where we need to be. And in the Bahamas, an easy example is always tourism, because 60% of our economy is built around tourism. So whether the problem is innovation, whether it's empowerment, whether it's SMEs, whether it's foreign direct investments, I think we can pivot from where we are in tourism to build new industries as well, and really to be the driver to solve many of the issues that confront us. I use tourism as an example because I know it's common all across the region. I think if we use what we have, we can get what we want. And I think that needs to be the objective of Caribbean investments now and into the future in terms of creating this bold new Caribbean. But let me just end by thanking you again for coming to the Bahamas. Please take an opportunity to put your toes in the waters, explore the underground marine environment at the back of this resort. It's absolutely fantastic, and always remember that it's still better in the Bahamas.
Minister, I will not dare summarize what has been really a fantastic conversation and such rich experience sharing, and I think together we are stronger. All I want to say, because I know you have to leave, Deputy Prime Minister, I mean, we are deeply grateful to you and your team, yourself, your leadership, the Honorable Prime Minister, Eric, Andy Burrows, my dear friend and brother Red Saunders, who's recovering from surgery. I wish him well. The Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I mean, all the colleagues here have been absolutely superb, and we are delighted to be here in the Bahamas. So thank you so very much. Minister Pavel, thank you so much. Minister Waldron, thank you so much. Please join me in recognizing our honorable ministers.
Thanks again to our outstanding panel, to all of the ministers, and of course to our executive director for leading that conversation. We certainly are poised to be a bold new Caribbean. I would like you at this time to go into the app and to review that poll. Just let us know your feedback very quickly on what you learned and how well the conversation was had, so that we can continue to improve the content that you receive as we plan for future CIFs. So please go into that poll. Very exciting times. Today is one of the days that somebody will get a prize for having corresponded with our polls, having used the app frequently, and so we do want to remind you to go ahead and do that. Up next, I am really looking forward to this conversation. The topic is preparing the Caribbean's next unicorns, disruptive technologies and the venture capital ecosystem. And to lead that critical conversation, I'd like to invite Jo Ellen Larea, Manager for Partnerships, Advocacy, Communications for Caribbean Export Development Agency, to lead a fireside chat with Dr. Nicholas Brathwaite, founding managing partner of Celesta Capital. Please give Jo Ellen a round of applause as she comes.
Good morning, everybody. How are you all doing today? Fantastic. Well, it's lovely to be here. So as you know, this morning we're going to be talking about unicorns. And as you know, unicorn is quite a sexy term at the moment. Everybody wants to own a unicorn or start the next unicorn business. Now, as of October this month, according to CB Insights, there are something like 1,200 unicorn businesses across the world. Now, as you can imagine, the large majority of these businesses are in the United States, with sharing about 50% of unicorn businesses. The other leading market is China. But however, just 2.4% are from Latin America and the Caribbean. And I can say that none of those are actually in the Caribbean as such. But Latin America and the Caribbean is recognized as one of the fastest growing regions in terms of venture capital investment. So this morning, I'm honored to welcome Dr. Nicholas Brathwaite. He's the founding managing partner for Celesta Capital, which is a leading venture capitalist firm that invests in exceptional entrepreneurs and disruptive technologies that can really help to shape our future. And as our host just mentioned, we're here to delve into how we can prepare for the next unicorn business in the Caribbean, disruptive technologies, and the venture capital ecosystem in this region. Dr. Brathwaite, it's lovely to have you here with us.
Thank you very much, and I am sorry I couldn't be there in person. I would much rather be in the Caribbean today than in Silicon Valley, but I couldn't pull it off. So thank you for accommodating me remotely.
Fantastic. So, Dr. Brathwaite, you're from Grenada. You grew up in Grenada, and you've become the founding managing partner for one of the leading venture capitalist firms managing a portfolio of over, a multi-billion portfolio. So tell us a little bit about how you managed to go from Grenada to where you are today.
Well, as you mentioned, I was born in Grenada, and I lived in Grenada until I was about 14 years old. Then my family actually moved to Guyana, and so I went to high school. I started high school in Grenada, then went to high school in Guyana, and then I actually finished high school, A-levels at the time, in Barbados. So I like to remind people that I went to 3 high schools in 3 different Caribbean countries, and I wasn't kicked out of any of them. And then I left the Caribbean to go to university in Canada, where I did my undergrad and grad work at McMaster University and University of Waterloo. And I was fortunate enough to then get a job at Intel. And Intel at the time had a facility in Barbados, and my first assignment was actually working in Barbados, where I was for about 2.5 years, and probably the best 2.5 years of my working career. It was a wonderful experience working in the Caribbean. And then I moved back to Silicon Valley at Intel, and spent another 4 years before I left and did the Silicon Valley thing, I guess, and became involved in a startup that was successful. We were funded by some of the premier venture capital firms at the time, and ended up being very successful. That company was then acquired by a company called Flextronics. It's now called Flex, where I became the chief technology officer. And I was part of an exciting period in Flex, where we grew that company from 150 million in revenue to 36 billion in 12 years. And I have been credited with being the guy that started all of the fastest growing businesses in the company. Then I left and ran a semiconductor company called Aptina, and at the same time started a private equity firm called Riverwood Capital. And then 10 years ago, I decided I really liked early stage investing, and so started the venture firm, which became known as Celesta Capital.
Fantastic. I mean, to be able to grow a business up to 36 billion in just 12 years is a phenomenal achievement. Now, you were with us in Trinidad and Tobago as well. I believe there should be a few people in the room that were also with us in Trinidad for the first Caribbean Investment Forum. Now, it was quite clear from your presentation then that you're very passionate about the Caribbean and the development of the Caribbean as a whole. And just to quote you, you shared your vision for the Caribbean, a region and people whose global significance is greater than the relative size of our population. Now, I think that's really quite poignant because as we gather here today, I mean, we're talking about how we can get the investment into the region and how we can grow our businesses and how we can, really boost our economic or fast track our economic development. Now, as we know, a unicorn business is one that is valued at over $1 billion US dollars. And as I mentioned, there's actually, well, there aren't any in the Caribbean as such, and I think about 89% of the world doesn't have unicorns. They're only in 26 of the 233 regions in the world. But one of the things that you said in your last presentation, which was really very fitting for today, is that you made a call for the region to create 500,000 jobs over the next 10 years, because by your estimations, it could triple our GDP by 2032. So tell us, how can a unicorn business help us to achieve such a target of creating 500,000 jobs?
Well, I'm not so sure that a unicorn business by itself, but so if you don't mind, I'd like to answer the question in multiple parts. So first of all, if you look at what a unicorn business is, as you mentioned, a unicorn business is a startup that's valued at over $1 billion. In our own portfolio today, we have about 11 companies in our portfolio that's valued at over $1 billion, and one of them is valued at $6.5 billion, and it's still a startup. And the problem is, just focusing on the unicorns is not going to get us to where we are. You can have unicorns that are valued at $1 billion and only employ 100 people. So I think the focus should really be more on how do we create an environment for a significant entrepreneurial activity and positive entrepreneurial outcomes. But to go back to first of all, the question about unicorns, there are about 4 things that you require in order to have a unicorn. One, of course, is that the company has to be tackling a very big problem. It has to be a big problem with a large market. And so if we're going to attract or start unicorns in the Caribbean, we have to start looking at solving bigger problems. And that goes mostly for if we're going to start companies there. We have to look at things that have much bigger market applicability than just the region. If we're going to attract potential unicorns, we have to be able to give those unicorns a competitive advantage that would allow them to get to success faster. So what startups need more than anything else is help in accelerating time to success. But we can come back to that. The second thing you need in order to create a unicorn is you have to have a very strong and credible team. The investment community have to believe that not only are you tackling a big problem and a big market, but that the team is capable of delivering the promise of the opportunity. You have to have sustainable differentiation, either in terms of technology or in terms of business model, but usually both technology innovation as well as business model innovation, and then the timing has to be almost perfect. There are many companies that had great ideas but were too early or too late, and then you have to become a unicorn. You have to have market traction. You don't become a unicorn just based on the idea. You have to demonstrate that you have market traction, and then it takes having the right team of investors in order to make sure that happens. So to try to answer the question, it's not a simple answer to the question of how do you attract or create this, but it has to start with having the right type of policies. We're doing a lot of work in India right now, and I've been spending a lot of time, and my firm and myself, in talking to the Indian government about policies that will help enable, the proliferation of these entrepreneurial activities and lead to bigger outcomes. But I think personally in the Caribbean, we shouldn't be too enamored about about focusing on necessarily on unicorns. I think most of the success, most business growth, most economic growth is driven by new businesses, but they don't have to be unicorns. We have to create an environment where we can have better entrepreneurial outcomes in general.
Fantastic. I think it's quite interesting, as I say to you, because we're so fixated on this kind of unicorn business, but what you've quite clearly said, that it isn't necessarily a unicorn business. As we've seen from a number of the businesses out there that have reached this status, they do have quite a small number of employees. So if we were looking at 500,000 jobs to be created, how are we actually going to achieve that? I think it was the ILO and World Bank in one of their reports that if we earnestly embrace the green economy transition, that could create 400,000 viable jobs within the region. And that's obviously looking at the green economy specifically. From your perspective, what sectors or areas do you feel that we should be focusing on, or where we should be putting our resources as it relates to, really trying to foster that environment and that ecosystem for those businesses to flourish?
Right. So, and you mentioned the fact that I was involved in building Flextronics, and Flextronics, we had 300,000 employees in 35 countries around the world. So I do have some experience in building, big businesses that employ a lot of people. But I think when we look at the Caribbean, we should not just be totally enamored with the new opportunities. We should not just be chasing after the new shiny objects. We should start by trying to figure out how do we make our traditional industries more productive. So when you look at agriculture and fisheries and construction and tourism, all of these are industries which are important to the Caribbean. And we should first of all try to figure out how do we leverage innovation and technology and to improve productivity in those industries so those industries can grow. If we're going to grow economies, we can't just be chasing after the next shiny object. So that's the first thing I think we need to do: improve productivity in our traditional sectors by leveraging innovation, business model innovation, technology innovation, other types of innovation to make those industries more productive, so we can grow those industries and increase employment. And then secondly, we should look for new opportunities to expand. And some of the areas that I think are ripe for the Caribbean to consider are the ones I think most places are starting to talk about those, things like the blue economy. Because when you think of the Caribbean, most of us, we might consider ourselves small island states, or as Prime Minister Mia Mottley sometimes says, we're big ocean states. We have in many cases the ocean, the area of our oceans are greater than the area of our land. And so we need to figure out a way to leverage that. And I think the blue economy is a good area to focus on. I think the creative industry is another one, but I have to admit that based on the few things I've read about what we're doing around the creative industry, I'm not sure that we have the right approach. But the creative industry is one that we should look at. I think fintech is an opportunity as well, but not the way it's being done today. When I think about fintech, I think about fintech as technology's response to the inadequacies of the current financial services industry. And the inadequacies relate a lot to how we have the financial services industries have treated or served the developing world. And I think they've underserved the developing world. And there's an opportunity for fintech companies to potentially rectify that situation. But everybody can't be trying to do the same thing, which is today is all about, client acquisition. And, we have probably 50,000 fintech startups in the world, and more than 40,000 of them are going to fail because they're all kind of doing the same thing. So I think that's an area. Another potential area is looking at, the med tech industry. And there are some areas there that we can also be transformative. And if we can solve the kind of problems we have in the Caribbean, that we're not the only ones that have some of those problems. And the problem has to do with things like access to medical service, to high quality medical services. We talk a lot about things like telemedicine. Those are areas that companies in the Caribbean could potentially address, either indigenously from indigenous startups, or by trying to attract the right kind of companies to come and locate there where we can give them a competitive advantage. But that competitive advantage, again, has to focus primarily on helping them to become more successful and getting away from the traditional forms of attraction, such as tax incentives and those things. Those are not gonna be very effective. Tax incentives are an expectation; they're not an attraction.
Okay, thank you. So, I know that Celesta Capital has been very much focused of late in the market in India, and you've been making a number of different investments in that market. What is it about that particular area that is so attractive as it relates to growing those businesses? What exactly are they doing right?
Well, let me also say that when I was at Riverwood Capital, which is our private equity firm that I co-founded in 2008, our initial focus there was on Latin America. And while I was there, we invested over $500 million in Latin America, a lot in Argentina and Brazil, but we also invested in Peru and Colombia and even places like Uruguay. And because we recognize that the rich opportunities there, and we've had some big successes. We had, I believe, the first technology startup from Argentina to go public in New York was one of our companies, and we were the first investors in that company. And I think that company today has done very well. I think they have a market cap of over $6 billion and has done very well. I have been involved in India for a long time. When I was at Flextronics, I started several businesses in India because I recognized the talent. Especially the engineering talent that exists in India. It's both talent and capacity. And while many people were going to India, primarily for cost arbitrage, I decided to look at India from a talent perspective. And while I was the chief technology officer of Flextronics, we started a couple of businesses there in India that became very successful. And when I ran Aptina, which was the semiconductor company where I was chairman and CEO, I started a division in India that also was very successful. So I've had a long history of over 20 years of making bets on the talent in India. So when we started our firm, it was clear that we were gonna look at India as an opportunity. But India wasn't a high priority in the beginning. Our priority was more on the US and Israel. And we've made very successful investments in Israel. And then, in the past, although we started investing in India 10 years ago, it's only in the past 5 or 6 years that we've really ramped up our activities. And so far we've probably invested about $100 million. But a big factor, I would say, there are several factors. I think for us in deep tech, and understand that there are many people who have been in India a long time and investing primarily in software and software services. We are deep tech investors, and meaning that we tend to invest in the development of core technology, hardware type products, and in technologies that are transforming large existing industries. And we saw the Make in India policies of the government was a key thing for us because that helped. We thought that would help to drive the growth of deep tech type investments in India, but also with the investments in infrastructure and all of those things that helped as well. Recently, the economic shifts that we see and that are caused by some of the geopolitical tensions that exist is also benefiting India quite significantly. So we've made 15 investments over the last 10 years in India. The investments have all been good. So far, we've had 0 failures. We've had a couple of exits, some big exits. So it's paying off. But a big factor has to do with the government commitment and some of the policies, but also on the engineering talent and the ability to leverage what we refer to as the U.S.-India corridor, which is an important aspect of that success criteria. And we need to also start thinking about that in the Caribbean. How do we leverage the U.S. Caribbean corridor, even the Europe Caribbean corridor, to help improve the outcomes of entrepreneurial activities?
Fantastic. Now, I know that obviously not only your venture capitalist firms have done a number of investments, and you also personally have invested in a number of businesses. I mean, what are the key principles or strategies that you consider to be essential for long-term investing, particularly as you know, there's with all of the external shocks and in today's market environment, what are the key things that should be that you consider essential for successful investing?
Well, I'll give a perspective from the type of investments we do in deep tech. Obviously, because you're dealing with core technology innovation, the sustainability of the competitive advantage, the sustainability of the technological differentiation is very important. So, you can't take technological risk. If somebody is trying to violate the laws of physics or something like that, that's not going to work. So you have to believe that the technology being developed is credible, and you have to believe that it will have long-term sustainability, because when you invest in a company, you're not just investing in the company for today. You have to believe that in 5 or 6 years or whatever length of time it takes to exit, that the company is going to continue to be successful. And in the technology world, first mover advantage is overrated. In fact, in many cases, the first companies to go into a space often do not win. And it's the people who come after that win. So Google wasn't the first search engine, and Apple wasn't the first to do an MP3 player, and Facebook wasn't the first social media company. And so you have to believe that whatever is being done is going to be sustainable. And a big part of that is betting on the team as well. You have to. So in terms of long-term survivability or sustainability, the quality of the innovation, the quality of the technology, the quality of the team, the size of the market, and the ability to execute become very, very critical. If you look at the risks that involve in the kind of investments that we do, you have the 3 major risks that everybody talks about, which is technology risk, market adoption risk, and execution risk. But when you start talking about the Caribbean and other places, there's also the whole concept of geographical risk. And geographical risk refer to things such as politics and policies and a lot of these things. You can't take the risk that if the government changes, the policy will change, and the assumptions around the investment might have to change. So those are some of the kind of things that you look at. From a personal perspective, as you mentioned, I've invested personally in several businesses in the Caribbean and Africa. It's a little bit different because I have a nostalgic connection to the Caribbean. In fact, I am a Caribbean person, even though I've lived most of my life outside of the Caribbean. And one of the prime ministers in the Caribbean asked me some time ago, what would it take to get me to come back? And I indicated to them that actually spiritual yet never actually left. I read multiple Caribbean newspapers every day. I'm connected to the Caribbean. I spend a lot of time there, and I love the Caribbean, and I'm committed to doing whatever I can to help. So, for me, sometimes I would invest in opportunities in the Caribbean just to be able to give entrepreneurs an opportunity, because I like the entrepreneurs, and I think what they're doing could be beneficial to the Caribbean, and I want to give them an opportunity to succeed. Many of them have not been successful, but for me, that's okay, because part of what I am also trying to do is help develop the next generation of Caribbean entrepreneurs. And sometimes the first opportunity is not going to be successful.
Yeah, it's very interesting what you say there, particularly as it relates to, sometimes these businesses that become the largest businesses aren't necessarily the first ones to do it. I think some of you were here yesterday evening. There were a number of pictures from small businesses from across the Caribbean, and so it's great to see that there is some level of innovation that is coming through. And yesterday in one of the sessions, Paul Ostrom gave his perspective as it relates to the education reform that could well be needed in order to support, that innovation, that creativity that is needed to come up with the new ideas. What's your perspective in that area, as it relates to the education and how we can really look to try and foster that entrepreneurial spirit in the Caribbean?
I think we need major changes in our approach to education. But let me start by saying, we inherited, most of the Caribbean anyway, inherited an education system from the British, which was fantastic in that it focused a lot on, the theory and the depth of scholastic understanding around subject matters. And without that kind of quality of education, I wouldn't be where I am. I've said often that my love of science started in the Caribbean from some of the teachers there. I remember I was taught by Mrs. Normal Holder, who taught me chemistry at A levels in Barbados, and she insisted that we shouldn't try to memorize things, but we should try to understand and the fundamentals, and so that we could derive equations rather than memorize them. And that depth of understanding is what drove for me a love and helped me to be able to develop products and solve some of the technical challenges I've been involved in throughout my career. However, as the world has changed and the opportunities today depend a lot on the application of the sciences, and our education system in general don't focus enough on the application of the sciences or the application of the knowledge. And so we have to make some of those changes. The other thing is the soft skills, the things we used to call soft skills, like leadership and presentation skills and problem solving, and a lot of these things that were never taught in schools have now become some of the most important skills in order to be successful. But also we have to try to create an environment where our students are not so afraid of failure, so that they're willing to take risk. And it would be lovely to see to get to a point where the majority of our students, instead of looking for a comfortable job, which by the way is what we were taught when I was growing up, you studied hard, you got a degree, you did well, and then you look for a job, a comfortable job. And today, the opportunities are actually in startups. And I would love to see us starting to get our kids, and I think it's happening, by the way. Our kids, when they graduate from school, are looking first for opportunities in startups or to start their own businesses rather than looking to these big established companies for work. But I think we have to change. There's a lot we have to change in the education, not just in the curriculum, but also culturally. The workplace requires collaboration, And collaborative learning is not something that we have done a lot in the Caribbean. When I was growing up, collaborative learning was not something that was pushed. In fact, most of us after school would go find a corner in a library somewhere and read on our own and try to learn on our own. And our schools need to create an environment where our students are collaborating through the learning process. So, I think one of the most important change that we need to make is having common areas where students can get together outside a library where you have to be quiet and by yourself, where they can get together and discuss and debate and argue over different things, because I think that is what the work environment actually looks like, and those are some of the skills that will help us to be better in the work environment.
Fantastic. Now, I would like to take this opportunity to open it up to the audience here and invite them to bring some questions to you. I think it will be great to hear from the audience and get some interaction there. I see a hand up over there. If you'd like to come forward to the microphone.
Hello, good morning. Keegan Patrick from Optronics, graduate student at MIT and alum of Draper University as accelerator program in Silicon Valley. So my question is, to create this positive entrepreneurial environment, we need to make the Caribbean a more attractive investment environment. The problem that I see is there's very few liquidity events, no M&As, few IPOs, disjointed stock markets. What is your perspective on how can we increase liquidity in the Caribbean to make it a more attractive investment area and to foster this thriving tech ecosystem that we want to have here in the Caribbean?
But I am not so sure that I agree that there is not liquidity in the Caribbean. I think if you look at our credit unions and banks, there's billions and billions of dollars of potential liquidity, if you want to call it that, in the Caribbean. I think our policies, government policies and other policies prevent the freeing up of those assets to be able to invest in the Caribbean. Also, I think that we have our risk aversion is a big factor there. So I think we have to first of all allow the huge amount of capital that we have sitting in banks and making 1 or 2% at best, allow opportunities for people to be able to invest. I also think we have to be able to attract smart money, because money by itself is not what creates success. If you look at the VC world, if money was all it took to create success, you wouldn't have a lot of failures. And in the VC world, you have on average around 30% failures. So, I mean, people think it's higher than that. You hear a lot of people say that 90% of startups fail, and that's probably true, but most of those fail before you get VCs involved. But once you get VCs involved, it's probably more like around 30%. Some people are worse, some people are better. And a lot of the difference has to do with what we refer to as smart money. So you have to be able to attract not just capital, but you have to be able to attract smart capital, because the biggest benefit that VCs bring is not the financial capital that they bring. If all you're looking for is financial capital, you're likely not going to be successful. It's the intellectual capital that's brought on top of the financial capital that's important. So we have to be able to attract smart money. And to be able to attract smart money, there are a number of things that need to happen. You have to have the right policies and consistency in policies. That's what we talk about. That's one of the problems we have in the Caribbean, is the geographical risk, because one of the things that investors hate more than losing money is losing money and looking stupid while you lose the money. It's easier if you can say a bunch of other people did it, like, people invested in Theranos and other things, and they can point and say, well, look at all the other people who also invested, even though you look back and you say that was kind of stupid. But you're coming into the Caribbean and taking that kind of risk would make an investor look stupid, because you just don't have the right policies, the consistency of the policies, and then government is going to have to help to find a way to help mitigate some of the risk that's being taken by investors. So, governments and local sources of money will have to play a role. It's not realistic to expect that all of the money will come from overseas. So I do agree with you that we have to find a way to allow local investments by freeing up some of the huge amounts of capital we have sitting in banks, so that freeing up the investment policies so that we can do that. And then government has to do more than just talk about stuff and start putting their money where their mouths. I listened to some of the previous panel and they were talking about government allocating a certain amount of money to small businesses and so on. That's important. But we have to also allocate money to startups.
Am I allowed one follow-up?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so we mentioned, I think in your response, you mentioned policy 2 or 3 times. I think we're in the room with the most transformative government leaders. Can we move forward to doing business, and how can we change policy to allow for investments to happen here from locally and also increase the velocity of investments? Because even when governments do disburse funds, the velocity that it happens is, let's say we have a small business program, it takes 6 months for me to get the funds to do something. I've lost the time window. I don't think that's a question.
In terms of government policy, let me just add one thing here. We're living in a technology-driven or technology-enabled world, and technology is fast-moving. And government policies need to take that into consideration. And our government policies cannot be set just by politicians sitting in a room and trying to set them. And you can't have policies that are foundationally based on stuff that is 10 years or a couple of decades old. So I would argue that in terms of a policy overview, that we try to get people out of the industry and people who are involved in things like, if you want to try to attract venture capital, it might make sense to have venture capitalists helping define the policies. Because as I said earlier, a lot of our policies center around things like tax incentives and those things. And I have sat on the board of 7 public companies. I've helped build one of the biggest companies in the world. We have a portfolio of over 100 companies, and I have never in my career heard somebody make a decision to move to a country based on tax incentives. So our policies are out of date and not in sync with what the industry needs. So it's not just having a desire to make the policy changes, it's also making sure that we have the right people influencing the policy changes.
Thank you. I think we could maybe get you and Tim Draper in the room and we could talk about policy.
Thank you. So Dr. Buffer, is that you offering your services to work with our governments in the region?
I have made it very clear every time I speak at anything that I am available to help in any way I can. I've been involved in helping one leader so far in the Caribbean, and I'm always available. I love the Caribbean, and I want to see nothing more than, as I said many times, the Caribbean becoming a place where our significance is greater than the size of our population. I think we have a lot to offer the world, and I think we need to take advantage of all of our resources in order to be able to do the things that we want to do, and take the politics out and focus on trying to build a Caribbean here that could be something special. And I am absolutely convinced of that. I think we have talent. We may not have the capacity, but we can always bring capacity in. I think we have the talent, and I think we have an opportunity here, which is a very good one. The other thing, by the way, I think we have to do differently is the Caribbean needs to become early adopters of technology. This is a technology-driven, technology-enabled world, as I said before, and you can't win if technology adoption becomes a secondary thing. You have to be early adopters, and today we're not early adopters of technology. Our governments are not, our community is not, except when it comes to entertainment. We have to be more bold in terms of adopting technology and leveraging technology to create differentiation in our region.
Fantastic, thank you very much. We have one more question here from the audience.
Hi, good morning, Nicholas. My name is Philip Julian. I am from Kenneth J. Green Limited, an indigenous project development firm focusing on green renewable, green energy projects in the Caribbean. And I just really wanted to say how inspirational your words have been. I think I heard a lot of amens behind me in the last statements you made. And many of us agree that there's some extraordinary capabilities right here in the Caribbean waiting to be shared with the rest of the world. And I think more in the question space is, the theme here has been talk less, more business. The key aspect is that Caribbean, sparking that Caribbean entrepreneurial spirit to kind of drive the way and pave the way. I firmly believe that private sector has a big role to play in doing that, as opposed to waiting on the governments to figure it out and enact the right policies. I think success breeds more success. So my question is, from your perspective, what do you see as a good next step or next steps to help really drive that Caribbean entrepreneurial spirit? What would it take for us to really bring that spark together within the Caribbean for that to occur?
Well, if you don't mind me being maybe a little bit provocative,
please.
I think it first of all starts with a vision that goes beyond things like a bold new Caribbean. And I hope you guys I don't mean to be obnoxious, so please don't, if it comes across that way, I apologize, that's not my intent. I think we need to set real goals, like 500,000 new jobs, tripling GDP in 10 years, and then go work on putting together the platform for doing that. I do agree with you that government's role is to help to pave the way and then get out of the way so the private sector can go execute and get things done. But I think it starts with setting bold goals, measurable goals. And people might disagree with my view of 500,000 jobs. Fine, that's fine. My approach to setting goals is that I like big, audacious goals, because big, audacious goals force you to make transformative changes. If you don't set big goals, you don't make transformative changes. You tend to fiddle around the edges and make slightly evolutionary type changes. You set big, audacious goals. And so if you set a goal of 500,000 new jobs, even if you did 400,000, would you consider that you missed the goal? If we said, let's go set a goal of creating 500,000 new jobs and we got 400,000, I don't think anybody is going to complain about that. So, but by setting a big goal, it forces you to make big changes. And I think we need big changes in order to be successful. And we need to also focus more on how do we enable the private sector to do the things that the private sector can and should be doing. There is too much dependency today in some islands. It's not true for every island, so I don't want to generalize too much, where the government is too involved in determining what private sector elements to support, how that support should be, and there's just too much politics involved. I think government needs to go out there, clear the path, and then get out of the way.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
You.
So I'm going to make a call. I'm going to make a call for that to be our actionable item after this conference, because I think it's important, and as Dr. Brathwaite mentioned, we need to set real tangible goals, something that we can really work towards. So I'm actually going to call for that for our executive director to make sure that we can cement that goal of creating 500,000 jobs into the agency's next strategic plan. I think we've seen a number of ministers and policymakers here in the region, and I'm going to suggest that, for the Caribbean Investment Forum, that is something that we have to give feedback on each year to see how we're going against achieving that target of creating 500,000 jobs. So, Dr. Brathwaite, I'd like to say thank you ever so much for joining us today. I think it was very insightful. I think there's a lot of work that we need to do, and I believe that after this event, you're going to be hearing from me to get you involved in us actually moving forward and putting the things in place to actually create these 500,000 jobs in the Caribbean, whether it's through the green economy transition, whether it's in fintech, whether it's supporting some of these businesses that we already have in the region to grow further, utilizing some of your expertise and your knowledge as well. So thank you very much, Dr. Brathwaite, for your time this morning.
And thank you for the opportunity to be able to speak with Caribbean people, and my offer to help is real and genuine. Everything that I have achieved started with the base that I got in the Caribbean, and so I just want to be able to play whatever part I can in helping us to realize the full potential of the region.
Thank you.
Thank you. What a phenomenal conversation. Thank you so much to Joe Ellen for moderating that fireside chat, and for Dr. Brathwaite for that great conversation and his willingness to answer questions and say the hard things. That is critical to the future that we all want. So we thank them again, and we're looking forward to more conversations to come today. We're hoping that you are engaging with one another and that you are having the opportunity to use your app to create those business connections. Again, we will offer a prize to someone today, so just a reminder to make sure that you are using the app. At this time, we're going to take a brief coffee break, a little liquid exchange. We do need everyone back in the room for 11:20 a.m., so that just gives you a little over 20 minutes to grab a cup of coffee. Of course, you can get that coffee in the Imperial Ballrooms B, C, and D, which is next door, and check out the exhibits that are happening there. I beg you, I really do, to be back on time. If you need Caribbean time, tell yourself 11:15, so you are here by 11:20. Thank you all so much. Continue to enjoy the morning.